Where's your favorite place to take college game day? And I say every time, Eugene, Oregon.
Hello and welcome, Ducks fans. Where and whenever you are watching or listening, this is the Once a Duck podcast, where we bring you up to date with current and former University of Oregon athletes and give you never before heard stories about your favorite teams and moments in Duck history. I'm your host, Nick Cody, former Oregon offensive lineman. With me, as always, my co-host, Samuel Tidrick Schmidt. And thank you to all of those that showed up to game day and gave us a shout out. We were there. And speaking of, our favorite moments in Duck history, let's talk about that game day first with our lightning yellow round. Before we get to that, Sam, oh my goodness. If you could summarize this weekend in one word, what would that word be?
Is a lot one word or is that two words? Because my goodness, it was a lot. It was a fun a lot. It was the best kind of a lot. But my goodness, from the lightning yellow round that we're about to get into about game day to that entire ball game to driving back down to California afterwards, it was a lot, but it was a whole lot of fun.
Well, you know me, of all people, will never be the academic police. But before we get into our lightning yellow round, I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to Kenny Farr and everybody on the Oregon athletic staff who made game day amazing, especially for my family, my mom. We'll get into the jersey a little bit later, but obviously that's something we're going to have to discuss. But thank you very much, Kenny Farr, first and foremost, taking care of former Oregon athletes, including our guest last week, Jordan Scott. If you haven't checked that episode out, please go back and check it out. Make sure you like and subscribe and let us know down in the comments who you want to see next. But man, Sam, we have so much to talk about, specifically about our experience at college game day. So I'm going to let you start it off. I'm starting the clock at 2 minutes. Let's go.
Well, Nick, I got to start with the fact that I got there probably way too early. Showed up, I think, around 3:15, 3:30 a.m. It was a heck of a time to be there. And at first I was sitting there amongst the students, but once one student started to, vomit everywhere, I realized that this was no longer a place that I wanted to hang out too much and that I was more than willing to go move over with you to the beautiful side of the stage that we found.
Well, I feel a lot better about waking up at about the time that you had texted me and sent a picture from your location. I was going, oh, damn. But yeah, got there a little late, slept, and we were planning to try and get over there, around 4 o'clock. But I have to tell you, I tried to go with the toga, and just that in itself was a battle. It put up more of a fight than UCLA on the football field, but I got it on.
Well, you know what, Nick? I think that sitting from the side of the stage like we did, able to watch the entire show, it was so fun, especially while standing right next to the feature story stage, we were able to see everybody come over, whether it was Kurt Herbstreit, whether it was Pat McAfee, whether it was Coach Dan Lanning coming by, fist bumping both of us before breaking down the defense. It was a fun spot to be in and a great place to watch the nation's pregame show.
No idea if he recognized me with the silly duck costume on. I didn't have the bull rings on, but did get that first fist bump after what was an excellent interview. We got to sit there right in front of it. Another favorite part of our location right there is when they were doing that silly random question section, which obviously, scripted, but still executed very poorly. We got a couple great chants going, especially for that one that was a coach that should be on the hot seat. We won't mention any names.
Well, Nick, I would be remiss not to mention what is everybody's favorite part of game day. It is when Lee Corso comes out, sits up on stage, picks games with everybody. Obviously, the GOAT, Sabrina Ionescu, she joined the team as well. But when Coach Corso put on that duck head, the entire quad roared. And that was a heck of a roar to be a part of.
Yep, that's a great way to end it. Man, overflow from our lightning yellow round is just, man, also what a touching moment in general. You could really hear Corso was on his best performance of the season. You could tell he really brought it. and his love not only for our Oregon Duck, but the duck they had on stage. Man, he was he was holding on to that thing tight. I watched the replay again, and everybody's look of concern for that duck was wild, except for Corso. He was loving that thing. Also, Sabrina getting shout started. Going to be one of the highlights of my memory, and my first college game day experience. So I got to go and experience, I guess, the aftermath of college game day, as we talked about last week with the 2007 Cal game. But my first real experience there, Sam, and I was so glad I got to experience it with you, Mike. Got to see Ryan Winters, Sports Chat 503 for those of you out there that follow us both. But man, just an incredible day. Got to see a ton of great ducks out there, and I can't say thank you enough to every one of you that gave Once a Duck a shout out, including saw a couple former guests there, didn't we?
We saw a couple of former guests, and it was a pleasure to be able to see them. We ran into both Brady Breeze and Bryson Young there at the game day set. So much fun. We posted those pictures. We'll probably post them again at some point. It was a pleasure to see those two at game day. And then as the day progressed, Nick, it really just stayed at that level. It was so much fun throughout, whether it was tailgating, whether it was the ball game, just so much fun.
Well, and what didn't stay consistent was the rain. We were laughing at one point over there for the feature stage where there was water piling up in one of the tents, and they had to keep trying to push it out of there. And man, just getting to watch all the behind the scenes from the angle we were at was really, really special. But that just continued on to the day, getting to be out there for what was a breast cancer awareness, having a bunch of people on the field that overcome or were fighting breast cancer, adding a little bit extra significance to what was already a really, really special and important day for a lot of Ducks fans. And man, the Ducks delivered on the field. The final score of that game being 45-30, which we were both extremely close to in our predictions. Like, you thought one of us was going to get it, but man, instead we'd both just be that close. Pretty amazing day. But even then, that scoreboard doesn't indicate what it really felt like going into that third quarter, or that fourth quarter, I guess, out of the third quarter, with a 38-16 lead and one of the best shouts I can ever remember. That it was almost like everybody got all their vocal warm-ups out that game day morning. So everybody was hitting the right notes at the right time as we got into the fourth quarter. And that was one of the most memorable shouts of all time.
Well, one of the best traditions in college football remained just that this weekend. It was so fun to be a part of Shout, so fun to be a part of the fourth highest capacity crowd in Autzen Stadium history. It was so much fun to see that. So much fun to be a part of that action. Shout out to our guy T-Rod. His tailgate beforehand definitely had both of us feeling right. It was such a good time. It was so enjoyable to be there, be around all the Duck fans, see so many people that we both know so well. A really great day, a really great experience. Always so much fun to check out those ball games. And my goodness, Nick, what a ball game it was.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I got to talk about is everybody's put the headline out there, that idea that Dan Lanning has out-chipped Chip. But to be honest with you, we saw something entirely different in this game. We saw, two offenses, honestly, that were very, very difficult to stop. But our defense kind of epitomized bend but don't break by limiting them to field goals. And even though we didn't have them punt, we only had to punt once ourselves. And ultimately in that game, the real, I think, big plays that everybody's going to talk about are going to be the onside kick and then the entire drive in the third quarter that just wore the entire UCLA defense down, ate up clock, did things that this Oregon team really hadn't done under Chip Kelly. I think the closest I could remember a game being like that was, I think, that Stanford game in 2010, where another onside kick from former guest Rob Beard helped really turn the tides in that game. But this felt like an entirely different energy.
Well, Nick, I texted you this after the ball game, and I think that it stands so true. Despite the fact that Oregon was taking on the number 9 team in the country, at the time ranked higher than they were, there was really never much of a doubt. It didn't feel very uncomfortable at any point. Usually I am the stress case in Autzen every single week when I'm there. I'm not somebody who goes into games feeling all that comfortable all that often. But man, there was really not a ton of stress from this one. For even Oregon goes out opening drive, kicks a field goal. Felt great. It's that kind of game. Get your points. Second drive from UCLA, they go down, they score a field goal. But here was the thing that stuck out to me. Oregon got their drive done in about 4.5 minutes, not super unusual for how this team likes to play, moving down the field, getting a couple of chunk plays, but also working it when they needed to. UCLA, though, they required 6 minutes and 27 seconds to move the ball 48 yards. That did not feel like a Chip Kelly offense, at least one that was very comfortable by any means. We often talk about the historic drive at Cal 2010. We'll probably talk about it in the second half of our show today when we get into that matchup and some other historic matchups against Cal. But beyond that, when was the last time a Chip Kelly offense was super comfortable taking up that much time to just get that? And once they kicked that field goal, once Oregon's defense, they did bend, but they didn't break at all. They really did stand up right there. There was another moment of, oh, okay, this doesn't feel too uncomfortable yet. Then immediately an Oregon drive that ends with a touchdown, the first play of the second quarter. Felt so great to sing coming home Oregon, immediately followed up by a beautiful play design to get Terrence Ferguson his 5th touchdown catch of the season. From then on, despite the fact that UCLA tied it up at 10, Oregon, a touchdown, the onside kick we mentioned that we can get into right now, but following that up with another touchdown, then one more before halftime, the Ducks really never let it be in question that much.
Well, and before we talk about that, you got to give Camden Lewis his flowers again. Normally, he's usually our special teams special player of the week, but that 44-yarder has to step aside this week for Andrew Boyle's onside kick. What I loved most about this is Dan Lanning talking about it with the media and how he expressed that he was glad that nobody that he had allowed in to see them working on that in practice had leaked it. And it's a pretty funny line there that takes me back of some of the things Chip would say, but I don't think he would ever allow that level of access. And even then, it was great to hear their process of how they had seen on the first 2 kickoffs that they were lined up, just how they had prepared. And even then, when they went out there to run it, it was the worst of the 3 looks that they had seen. But you know what? The kicker just went out there and executed. I think it was Hill or somebody, whoever was the L1 out there, I believe is what they'll call that position, went out and just waited for the ball to cross 10, laid out a block, and it was just so well executed. And you could see as UCLA standing there and Oregon celebrating, they were starting to get a little chippy, and that was a lot of the last of the fight we saw, because that just took the wind out of their sails, and Autzen Stadium started to roar and roar and roar.
Well, and I think it came at the absolute perfect time, Nick, because immediately before that, we had seen the 57-yard pass from Bo Nix to Troy Franklin. The pass that I think the onside kick afterwards almost makes it so that we won't talk about it the way we should, but that was probably the best pass I've seen from Bo Nix all season. An absolute beautiful ball. The minute he put it up, everybody in the stadium, whoa, oh, just perfectly thrown, perfect route by Franklin. A beautiful play design that the crosser dragged the safety down, so Franklin really did have the one-on-one the entire way there. Such beautiful work from Dillingham, such great work from both the quarterback and the receiver on the play.
Great protection.
Terrific protection. But what I loved was that this had come after a number of handoffs and read options that had been slowly bringing the UCLA defense closer and closer to the line. Just before this play, a perfect read option by Bo Nix that led to a first down run. Then to run the play action out of that, such great timing. Nobody was ready. As I said, the safety was sucked down by the crossing route. Wide open touchdown. Beautiful, beautiful play. Troy Franklin, all he could do was run under it, put his hands out, fell right perfectly to him. But on to the onside kick. My goodness. One thing that I loved seeing upon watching the replay this afternoon was that they had actually asked Dan Lanning coming out of halftime about that decision to have the onside kick. And yes, it was something they had practiced all week. Yes, it was something that they wanted to execute at some point. But I loved that he said the weather played a role into it. They could see the clouds coming. They could see that it was about to get wet. And they wanted to be able to grab some more points and be able to do a little bit more on offense while conditions were still ideal to do so. And the timing worked out perfectly, because after the Boyle onside kick, the terrific block, waiting just the 10 yards, like you said, Jamal Hill did just enough to get his body in the way. Boyle with the perfect timing to jump on it once it had gone 10.0001 yards. He was able to land on it. Oregon just about broke UCLA's back, making it a 24-10 score. A point total UCLA wasn't able to overcome until a garbage time touchdown late, finishing it off with a Jordan James touchdown after a pretty funky formation that Oregon moved out of, but we'll love to see what that leads to later in the season. Really a perfectly timed play that, granted, if it doesn't go well, UCLA gets a quick score. Maybe with 2020 hindsight, we're all judging it a little bit differently. But in the reality we're in this timeline, an absolutely perfectly executed special teams play. Special teams, as always, were so special.
Yeah, so special. And what you have to mention with being special again is Bo Nix, another 5 touchdown day. And yeah, Franklin, a big part of that, 2 touchdowns, 132 yards at 8 catches, averaging 16.5 yards a catch, man. That's tough to stop, and up there with the best receivers, not only in the Pac-12, but especially per pass play, definitely in the nation. But that's something we'll talk about especially as we preview Cal Week. But man, we talked about it in our podcast. Look good, feel good, play good, and damn, did the Ducks look good. Now, especially seeing the uniform right there at College Game Day when it was pitch black outside, still would have loved to see that in the nighttime. Maybe if you're going to give those one more run next year, man, do it for a night game. Please, fingers crossed. But man, as you could see, jersey over here, Sam. What did you think about it in person? I know you were rocking yours in game day and at the game. How did you think they looked on not only on the field in Austin, but on TV later in highlights?
I thought they looked really, really, really strong. And honestly, as the weather progressed, once the overcast came in and it got a little darker and gloomier, oh, they just popped beautifully. It was such a fantastic look. Everything looked great about it, from the helmet, the jersey, the volt on the shoulders, the pink on the numbers, the black pants, and even, as Jordan mentioned last week on the podcast, the bottom of the cleats being pink. Such a small detail, but such a great detail, especially watching those players run down the field. The one that sticks out to me specifically is the Bucky Irving touchdown catch in the second half. When he's blazing down that sideline, you can just see the pink bottoms kicking up, and man, it is such a great look. I think it was D'Anthony Thomas on Twitter this week that said, no lie, that might be the best look ever. I'm not sure I'm quite willing to go that far, but if I'm looking at my season rankings thus far of uniforms, easily top 3, most likely top 2, arguably the best.
And I got to tell you, having gotten my hands on it, the quality, even compared to the things I wore back in my day, is superb. The level of detail they put into this, down to the ventilation on the numbers, and that being identical to the gridiron template, and all going the same direction as our Ducks were on Saturday. I couldn't be happier with it, and I know me and my family are very, very, very thankful and happy to have this, and also very happy to see Jordan Scott not only got his, but got his on, because thank God this doesn't fit me, because I'd be walking all around downtown Seattle almost every day with this thing on.
Well, even just like the detail, the ventilation, like you mentioned, when we had Daryl Hawkins on, that was one thing I was so sure to ask him. All of these uniforms, that's what's so crazy. That's a part of the base template. A part of the base template of this look is to have the Ducks be the ventilation on the numbers. Terrific work by him. As he said, he took full credit for that decision. He deserves the credit. Fantastic look. Really one of my favorite Oregon disruption moments in a long, long time. It looked so fantastic, and Oregon played so fantastic in them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of disruption moments, it wasn't all great for, especially on the defensive end. They did allow a lot of yards, and significantly, we did outrush them. But UCLA is a really, really good offense. But we had some standouts on defense, that guys are really stepping up that we haven't seen this year. Steve Stevens leading the team in tackles with 4 solo and, what was it, 3 assisted. And man, just going out there and seeing, it wasn't at all, I think, the defense we expected here, especially statistically going in, but getting to see, our playmakers making plays, young guys step up and holding the offense in check, especially to just 16 points in the first 3 quarters, was really, really damn impressive, regardless of what the final stats are or what DTR seems to think at the end of the game with their execution.
Well, I think that both teams did exactly what we expected them to do and be able to move the ball a lot. I think the weather ended up being nice enough that they were able to put it through the air a significant amount. Total passing yards, Oregon 283, UCLA 262. Rushing yards, Oregon 262, rushing for UCLA 186. What I like to see there, though, is that this Oregon defense, they were bend but don't break. UCLA has that 30 score. That's 3 touchdowns, 3 field goals, one of those touchdowns, again, being a garbage time score. Oregon, they were able to turn almost every single drive into a touchdown. There were only 2 that weren't. The field goal by Camden Lewis early, the late punt that, was pretty meaningless by the time that Oregon had to do it. The Ducks, they were able to move the ball against what was touted as the best rushing defense in the Pac 12. Statistically, they were to that point, but the Ducks really didn't hesitate. The offensive line was so good. Big Sala, as we know, he got out in space, absolutely moved people. Walk was doing the same thing. Jackson Powers Johnson had a terrific day run blocking, and even the tight ends, Ferguson, Matavau, Herbert, Cam McCormick, who shout out Cam McCormick, another touchdown catch, number 3 on the season, currently the second leading tight end in terms
Awesome
of
play.
Awesome play. Everyone was so engaged in the blocking. Everyone was so engaged in every play in general. The Ducks really looked fantastic. And may I just say, Nick, I love that both of Oregon's tight end touchdowns came out of double verticals, putting the same exact position in the position of having to make the decision. Am I going to go with the receiver? Am I going to go with the tight end? Either way, they were getting beat.
Exactly. And the way that, especially a lot of the schemes Coach Dillingham had going, had everybody fired up, especially himself. Seen a couple of those videos from the booth there that they caught him at great moments, man. Love to see that energy out of Oregon's offense coordinator, and that production on the field shows you exactly what that can translate to, and everybody's attention to detail, including one of my favorite plays was Patrick Herbert in pass protection. So Bass can just sit there and, hey, I might just take this play off. I'll be ready. But Herbert's out there just acting like it's a run block right there at the line of scrimmage and pass, bro. Love to see that. Everybody's bought in. They're sold in this scheme. And, God, you got to take all this energy, capture it now, and go on the road for 2 games and bring it with you in your lunch pail.
Oregon's going to need to bring it, and I think they're going to have a couple of guys that will be able to do so, especially against Cal and Colorado. One guy, we've mentioned him a little bit, but we haven't mentioned how great a day he had statistically. Bucky Irving.
Oh, yeah.
Irving had a really strong game. 19 carries, 107 yards. He also had 3 catches for 57 yards and that touchdown in the fourth quarter, the one that pretty much sealed the game if it wasn't already. I believe that was on a 4th down as well. Just getting it out of the backfield to him having the speed to burn everybody down that sideline. A really strong game for Bucky Irving, who, despite how crowded that running back room is, and despite the fact that every single running back that played in that game had a good game for Oregon, Whittington had a great game. Dollars had a great game. Jordan James had the rushing touchdown. Bucky Irving has seemingly begun to separate himself from the rest of the group, being the true RB1 of that group, number 0 in the backfield, so elusive, so hard to bring down, very rarely the first guy that does it. He had another great game. He is somebody that if he can bring that down to Cal, take it out to Colorado, Oregon will be in very good hands.
Definitely. And you love to see that everybody's really playing their roles, with Noah being that changeup back and getting 12 carries. 6.1 yards a carry is lethal if that's your backup running back. And then getting down there in the red zone and knowing you can rely on Jordan James to punch it in, or potentially one of our tight ends or our quarterback. Hey, if you're sitting there as a defensive coordinator going into Oregon week, you have so much you have to prepare for. Especially in the red zone and, especially up there on the goal line right now. Oregon's got a lot of options. And what's been awesome is they've been able to mostly dictate what they're going to do to you in those situations and go out there and execute it.
Well, and just going back through looking at the running back stats as a total,
Yeah.
such impressive work from all of these guys. As I said, Irving, 19 rushes, 107 yards. Whittington, 12 rushes, 73 yards. Bo Nix, 8 rushes, 51 yards. Sean Dollars, only 2 rushes, but 27 yards on those 2 rushes. He really is just a different kind of change of pace guy. Love
Yeah.
seeing him back in the fold this season. And then power back Jordan James, only 7 rushing yards on his 3 attempts, but we know exactly where those are coming. Those are fourth downs and goal line opportunities. And he was taking full advantage of them. I think the thing that stuck out to me the most, though, Nick, is that beyond Dollars with an 18-yard long, nobody else was over 14. That means that such consistent running from these guys. Bucky Irving had 107 yards and his longest run was 13.
Yeah.
That being said, how many 9-yard rushes did he have? How many 11-yard rushes did he have? This was a guy that was consistently putting Oregon in second and short. If this team can continue to be in second and short situations throughout the season, the sky's really the limit.
Yeah. And then also want to point out, and props to Bucky Irving also getting 1 kick return out there for 17 yards. But Seven McGee in the return game has been a reliable guy back there. And that's sometimes been something that in the past has been a little bit shaky, but seeing him get, a couple, I think he averaged 20 yards at least from the stats it shows here. But, that's one of those positions that, if you don't get breakout plays, you don't talk about them often enough. But when they aren't fumbling and when they aren't making bad decisions on returns, you got to be really, really happy about that, especially against Chip, because he's always trying to scheme up where he's going to put you in the worst position on the field in terms of the kicking game where you get those extra yards.
Well, and another player that offensively had a underratedly good game for Oregon, Chris Hudson. Chris Hudson came out in this ball game. He had 3 catches for 14 yards, but as he has almost throughout the entire season, he had a huge play, not huge, but a big play to start the game, just swinging it out to him, being able to pick up, I think, about 9 yards on that play. Also, Franklin's second touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I loved this play, right? For so many reasons. And I'm just going to nerd out and get into it for a moment, right? Oregon gets the ball and they drive and almost kill the second half completely. They work it down the field slowly but surely. Nix on a run gets out about the 2-yard line with about 7 seconds left. I'm standing, complete stranger, lovely individual, next to Autzen Stadium, right next to me. In this moment, we'd been chatting back and forth a little bit. He says, 7 seconds, one chance, got to do something. And I tell him, 7 seconds, that's some time. All you got to do is get Nix outside of the pocket a little bit, give him a couple of different options to that right side. If he's got it, great. If not, throw it out the back of the end zone. You kick the field goal. And what happens? Nix takes the snap, rolls out to the right. I've got the recording of it where you can hear him standing next to me going, "You called it. You called it." Nix fires a pass caught by Troy Franklin for a touchdown. And if you look at that play, while Coda goes up and out, clearing the way, Hudson comes across and just sits there. Sits there like he's waiting for a pass. But what he's doing is sitting perfectly in the path of the defender who's all over Troy Franklin. The defender has to move just around Hudson just enough. Beautiful open play for a touchdown. Everything came together on that drive. Everything came together on that one individual play. So perfectly executed by the players, so perfectly run by the coaching staff. By the time Oregon's able to kick the extra point up and through, there's just 1 or 2 seconds left on the clock. UCLA is forced to take a knee. And in a game where you are kicking off to start the second half, that touchdown at the end of the half is so vital, so important. It's something Oregon has been struggling with, scoring at the end of the first half over the last few seasons. They've been incredibly efficient at it this season. This might have been the very best example.
Yeah, and having that dialed up as your red zone play and putting that faith in your quarterback, man, that's that's exactly what man, you tip your hat to all those offensive coordinators that run those situations so many times in practice that those players can go out there and execute. And definitely some we've been lacking in previous years, especially to end quarters or halves, or especially end of game scenarios. But man, it's great to see a lot of these guys really, really thriving. I'm excited for what we're gonna do in these next couple of weeks here. But man, it's been an entirely different season than I think that most of us expected, and I welcome that. I think a lot of us were going into this thinking, okay, maybe there might be by the midpoint of the season a switch at quarterback, maybe a couple different positions we lean on or change. And no, right now, man, Bo Nix has been the man. Will continue to be the man as long as this offensive line can continue to keep him clean, and our receivers can continue to, and tight ends especially, can continue to keep getting open and being devastating in the passing game.
Well, I think the season is turning out pretty different than a lot of people expected. And granted, you're 6-1 through 8 weeks in a bye. There's still plenty of time for just about anything to happen. Obviously, you got to stay focused, got to stay on the ball. This is the team that's worked themselves back up to number 8 in the country. You are on the radar. Got to keep doing your job, got to keep doing the things that we know you can do, but you're in a decent position. Nick, walking away from Autzen Stadium, I had a thought, we can call it a realization maybe, but it was of a comparison, right? Walking away from the building that day, I went, wow, at least so far, this season feels very 2011-ish. Extremely 2011-ish. You go play in a tough environment against a very high-powered team in week 1, and you kind of get your ass kicked a little bit. But what happens? You regroup, you start playing better and better every week, and all of a sudden, the train is rolling down the tracks. Now, obviously, if you're going to have a 2011-ish season, you should keep focused and make sure that a late senior night matchup against a very highly talented Pac-12 South team doesn't nip you in the butt a little bit. But I will say this, Oregon's got the kickers this time. If nothing else, Oregon's got the kickers this time.
Well, we aren't going to talk about that school down south. They won't be coming back to Autzen anytime soon. But yeah, man, I'm hoping we get to see them possibly later down the line. You know, I still remember that being the one loss I have as a starter. But yeah, that season was special. We come out against LSU, and a lot of people had dismissed us, like a lot of people dismissed the Ducks after week 1, and we all knew. Everybody just put their work in and turned it around from there. And you know, one of the guys who got to be a part of that and we get to talk to right now is, you know, a guy who came in with Marcus Mariota and got to watch that season as a redshirt, and that's wide receiver BJ Kelley. With us now, a guy I got to play with for a couple of years, Oregon wide receiver BJ Kelley. BJ, thank you for joining us. First and foremost, I got to say, I promised you when I saw you at the Rose Bowl, and you were the only other guy with near as much bling as I did and that much hardware out there flexing. What's it like for you to see the Ducks in that moment, to go to and win another Rose Bowl after your career, and then to see them beat UCLA this week with College Game Day? What's that feel like for you as a former Duck?
It's the best feeling to see my former team just excelling like they have. It's nothing like it. I remember playing and just being there, watching and enjoying the atmosphere. There's nothing quite like it. And last week beating UCLA, that was just a beautiful game, you know, with our uniforms looking like they did, you know, beating Chip. I know it's a little rough for some people, but, you know, it felt good.
BJ, thanks so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to meet you before that Rose Bowl game back in 2020. Thing I got to ask you, man, is a guy from California, grew up just outside of the Bay Area down there a little bit. What was the decision making to come to Oregon? What made you want to become a Duck, spend your time in Eugene?
Oh, man, that's crazy. You know, I kind of had like a small beginning. I was born in Arkansas, and you know, when I moved to California, I kind of wanted to have a chance to play football, and so I ended up moving to Fresno. And I don't know why, I was like in summer school. For some reason, I was just like doodling in class. I was just drawing like Nike signs, just Nike signs for no reason. And then I ended up having the opportunity to get a scholarship to Oregon. And when I saw that scholarship come in, when I talked to Chip Kelly personally when he came down to visit me, it was just like kind of sealed the deal. Playing for the Oregon Ducks is a big dream for a lot of people, and I feel like that was a great opportunity for me. So it was really cool to get the opportunity.
Another great opportunity you had is be a part of another great and historic program at the University of Oregon, and that's the track program. What was that experience like for you, and how did that help to add to your speed on the football field?
Man, I'm just really appreciative of everything I've been through. Running track, I always looked at that as something that could improve my speed. And being a receiver, I didn't just want to be able to like just be running routes really good. I wanted to be really fast. And Hayward Field and the whole track program at Oregon is very historic. And I met a whole bunch of great athletes. They really changed my life. A whole bunch of great coaches. I got to travel pretty much across the United States and compete with some of the best of the best. It was just amazing. Everything about Oregon to me was just amazing.
Well, BJ, when you first get on campus, that first week or so that you're there, what was the number one impression you had from not only just the football program, but the university and community of Eugene as a whole?
It was almost overwhelmingly beautiful and exciting. It's my first time just stepping on campus. I was with Anthony Thomas, Rashawn Vaughn. I remember Josh Huff. I ran into him on campus, and just walking around trying to get affiliated with all the buildings and stuff, and just seeing like just how well put together the whole campus was, and walking around and just seeing all the Duck atmosphere everywhere. There's no quite feeling to explain it. It's great vibes. You meet a whole bunch of people that are just smiling, having the time of their lives, and it's great. I made a lot of friends on campus, so it's pretty cool.
So I still remember the very first season you came into the program, and you came in with a really special class of players who would go on to, who I eventually think will probably get another plaque like this in the Hall of Fame pretty soon. But fingers crossed for you guys here in the coming years. But what was that like? And who are a bunch of the guys in your freshman class that stand out to you as guys that you knew right away were going to be impactful on the football field for the Ducks?
I remember coming in, there was a whole bunch of hype about Marcus. I came in same year as Marcus, and never quite saw a quarterback like Marcus. I came in with Anthony Thomas, Devon Blackman, Takoi Sumler, Colt Iorla, like just a whole bunch of great players, man. And yeah, I think I'd say it was probably between Marcus and Anthony being like the most well known and people the most excited to see them. And it was just really fun. It was really cool.
Well, BJ, guys like yourself and Marcus took a slightly different road than guys like Colt and D'Anthony, in that you spent that first year redshirting for the program. Talk about that learning curve as a freshman, just learning, taking that red shirt, and just being able to sit there and watch a really, really talented team out on the field.
To be honest, I really appreciated the opportunity to redshirt because walking in there, I don't know if I would have been able to handle that pressure and just be able to pick up everything like everybody else did. It takes a certain type of mind to be able to handle that, and not only that, you have to have your body ready and stuff. And so redshirting for me was great. It's something I really needed. Gave me more time to work on my body. Learn the offense. Watch the players in front of me, learn how everything really works and stuff. And yeah, redshirting for me was really good. It was fun. I get to watch LaMichael, got to watch Kenyon, got to watch Darren Thomas, just do their thing and stuff. And I was just really excited to have my own opportunity to play.
Yeah, and when you got that opportunity, it was for a Fiesta Bowl season where we had a ton of veteran leadership on that team and a lot of guys competing for spots. What was it like, and what do you remember from that redshirt freshman year of competing with a bunch of those guys we had? And what highlights from that season do you still remember?
Man, I just remember the competition was just really intense. We really looked up to you guys, the older veterans and stuff that have been there, and man, every game to me was like a memory. But yeah, winning the Fiesta Bowl was just something no one's really experienced. When you're at Oregon, it's just different. Just the atmosphere, the gifts and stuff. The practices, the location. there's so much to be said. And even the way we looked, our uniforms, we had the best of the best gear. It's a lot to take in, but if you take the time to appreciate what you have, man, you'll just feel all the love that Oregon has to offer.
BJ, one game specifically that season that sticks out to me when thinking about your career, the fact that you were able to catch a touchdown at California, back down in the Bay Area, around where you grew up. Oregon's traveling to Cal this weekend. They've got a game against the Golden Bears. Tell us a little bit about what you remember from that first matchup, your redshirt freshman year, and about that touchdown you were able to grab.
Man, that was pretty meaningful to me. Coming back down to Cali, I had the opportunity to have some of my friends and family there at that game, and I was just excited to maybe get the chance to get in the game. And when I did, I just wanted to do what I could, whether it be blocking or like making a catch. The touchdown was obviously better than I could ever expect or hope. But I just remember going down there, trying not to be too nervous. I had some friends out in the crowd, and I got the opportunity to catch a touchdown because of a tipped ball. And I just remember being super focused on the ball the whole time, and it happened to go through one of my teammates' hands, and I was just ready, and I just kind of grabbed it and held on.
Man, love that. What was it like for not just you, but what you're feeling for the team in general from going from that Fiesta Bowl and then transitioning to Mark Helfrich taking over as head coach, your position coach bumping up to offensive coordinator. What was that transition like for you and the team?
Um, for me, it was pretty difficult because I didn't actually get as much playing time as I wanted after that transition. But for the team, it seemed to be way more smoother. I just wanted the whole success for the team. It's not really about yourself. So, I just kept working hard, trying to prove myself in practice. I was one of the top guys on scout the whole time, scout team, just giving the defense the best look that I could every time I got a chance. So but yeah, we still had all the talent, still had coaches that cared about us, and it was good for the team. It was all right. I wouldn't say good, but it was all right.
Well, BJ, as a receiver at the University of Oregon, you were around so many talented guys throughout your career. You had guys in that room like Josh Huff, spent plenty of times playing in the pros. You got Devin Allen currently on the roster with the Philadelphia Eagles. You got even a guy like DeAnthony Thomas who was in and out of that room, was spending time with the running back room. What do you remember from that group of receivers going into those meetings every week and just being a part of that group as a whole?
um, the receiver core, I remember, man, we were a really tight knit group. Like, we were really cool. Like, I can't say anybody was really selfish. We were all just really tapped into winning and being the best. We would all help each other. Keenan Lowe was, a receiver I was there with too. I looked up a lot to him. He was a great guy, great player as well. Daryl Hawkins was there too. Dustin Hoffman. So yeah, there's a lot of veterans, Josh Huff, Rashawn Vaughn, a lot of people out there just balling every chance they got. So, every time we were in the playroom researching the film, watching film, we were pretty much locked in, but it was always love though. We learned a lot from each other.
So I know this might be a difficult subject to talk about, but you feel free if you want to just pass on it. But I know you've foregone your senior season. Do you wish, with especially the way the transfer portal is available now and with NIL, that would be available like back when we played, or are you at peace with it, or just explain what went into that thought process? We know obviously as playtime diminished and with the staff, it's probably pretty good, like that you were able to go and do your own thing because scout team is tough. It's a lot of tough years on your body, but just what went in that process for you, and how do you feel about it today?
I do wish the transfer process was like it is right now, that would have been really nice. But for me, it was pretty hard. I took it kind of personally because I did come to Oregon with a dream. I wanted to go to a national championship and help them win. So when we did go to the national championship and I didn't have the opportunity to get in the game at all, it really hurt. And I was a redshirt junior at the time, but I really, once Helfrich came in, I really didn't have any more playing time. Even as a sophomore, really, I think I had one catch my sophomore year after Helfrich came in, and then my junior year, I didn't have barely any playing time. So for me, I got kind of sad, to be honest, working my butt off on the scout team, giving my all, but I don't regret it, and I don't really have any regrets. Um, I left it all on the field, so I could say that. And my team was successful and everybody's having a good time. So it's not, I didn't try to be selfish. I mean, obviously I do wish I had a little bit more playing time to showcase my skills. I might be somewhere else, but wouldn't change anything that happened because I'm happy where I'm at, and Oregon's still great right now. So it's all right.
Well, and I can tell you, we both love and appreciate that attitude for sure. Love to see that there are no regrets, because that's never something you want to hear from somebody. So glad that you are in the position you've been able to put yourself in, man. Moving
Thank
ahead to this current Oregon football team, you talked about that game last week. You were able to at least hear about it, if not see some of it for sure, just based off our conversation here. What have you really noticed from this Oregon team, and how have you kind of seen it as a little bit different than some of the teams you were able to be a part of?
Man, this Oregon team, I don't really know how to explain it, but I love the heart that they've been displaying. It's kind of hard to compare to how we were, because we were really, like, I feel like the best years of Oregon at that time. But to have this coach come in and come in with a new quarterback, and last week they did their thing. I was really proud of them. They looked really good and sound. I would just say, I think, like, our play calling, is not too much different. The speed is just maybe a little bit slower, but not really different. Like, still displaying the heart and still getting it done. So that's all that really matters to me. But last week was beautiful. I'm glad Chip got that loss to us.
Right. Yeah, I enjoyed getting to experience that. But speaking of in Autzen experiences, I know we got to see you at the Rose Bowl, but when's the last time you got to get down to Autzen, and when's the next time Oregon fans can expect to see you there?
Man, to be honest, I have not been back to Austin since I left, but I really look forward to coming out there soon, to be honest. I'm looking on getting married, and I have a 6-month-old son, so I'd love to bring him out there in an atmosphere and just show him where I used to be and stuff, give him a lot of that Duck love.
Well, congratulations, and we'll have to hook you up with staff to make sure that happens whenever you're able to, man.
Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate that. It'll be fun.
BJ, one of the last ones I got for you, because we don't want to take up too much of your time at all. Nick has been stealing this question from me the last couple of weeks, so I got to make sure I jump on it this week because it is one of my favorites. You mentioned spending that time in school, drawing those Nike logos and everything. You played during what a lot of people would consider the golden age of not just Oregon football, but Oregon football uniforms. Was there a specific game or a specific look that you particularly liked or look back on and really appreciate having worn?
Man, I'm gonna be honest. Every uniform to me was so sick, man. Like, just the amount of detail for every game was just so cool. And like, during the warm-ups or like the pre-games, they would like have like my character like with the number 23 displayed, so everybody know what we look like that during that game. And I always thought that was really cool. But I would say personally, my favorite game happened to be against Fresno State, which is where I came from. I came from Fresno. And I think the uniforms were super sick. We were wearing the yellow tops with like the black wings, but we had the chrome and like silver helmets, and like the silver and the yellow and back to silver pants. Man, I thought it looked so cool. And it was like, looking in the crowd, you could just see a whole bunch of yellow, so it was like a great vibe. And I think that game looked really beautiful. The sun was shining and everything. So I think I took that a little bit personally. It was a great feeling to be out there.
Well, man, I'm going to end on this question. Speaking of looking super cool, you had a tradition that even made a couple headlines. What inspired you to jump up into the student section in pre-games? And how awesome was that? Because I still remember thinking, man, if I could, I would.
I just wanted to give people the opportunity to, like, be right there with the Oregon football player, and I thought it was a good way to use a little bit of my energy I had, to just jump up there, be up there with a couple of seconds, hang out with them, and it was just a love, a whole bunch of love from the crowd and from me. It was really a nice opportunity, and I'm glad I did it. It was great times.
Well, BJ, thank you for joining us, and more great times ahead. We hope we can have you in Autzen Stadium soon, and Once a Duck, always a Duck, buddy.
Go
Ducks.
Ducks. Hey, thank you guys for having me.
Awesome interview with BJ Kelley. And if you guys want to let us know who you want in future interviews, let us know down in the comments on YouTube, especially. We got one this week from Kingston Green who wants to see us interview Juwan Johnson. I think he might be pretty busy right now. Seems to be doing pretty well. But hey, we love the recommendations. Go right now. If you aren't already subscribed on YouTube, let us know in the comments on this video who you want to see in future episodes.
Well, man, you know what? I think Juwan's obviously worth reaching out to, but I feel like a USC week especially would be perfect for that guy.
That is a good call and something we'll definitely have to look into. But also out there, if you're not already following us on Twitter, we'd like to provide you guys with, a big question when we go and record. And this week, our question is, Ducks fans, heading into the first of 2 straight games away from home, what does this Oregon team need to do to maintain that odds and energy in Berkeley? Let us know below, and we'll read your posts on this week's podcast. And thank you guys that did reply and share. I'm going to start off with at 78DBD. DB Dub, B Williford, jump out to a lead, step on their throat, and put this one away early. Man, especially for a 12:30 a.m. game, I would love, or 12:30 p.m. game.
I was going to say, that's pretty early.
I would love for that to happen. I know game day's got my my internal game clock completely messed up now, but
that's Pac-12 way after dark.
It's definitely going to feel like a morning for me still, but I would love for us to get it out early, be able to have us all celebrating, especially for you and Mike, who will be down at the game. I hope you guys are able to just spend most of the third and fourth quarter just celebrating with the rest of the Ducks fans and not too many Bears there.
Well, I have a feeling that might be a theme here, that not too many Bears there. I don't know if you know this, but I feel like Cal Berkeley doesn't necessarily have the greatest tradition of selling out California Memorial Stadium. Hey, maybe this will be the chance, but the fact that I just saw tickets on ESPN being advertised for about $30, I'm guessing not so much. Tweet I'm going to read here, it actually has to do with fans being in attendance. Jason Eliason at Eliason Jason. Fans that can be there, be there. Players on the sideline can generate plenty of energy on their own as well. And I agree, energy is going to be key, especially for a 12:30 start time. Oregon will be rolling into California, getting ready for what's sure to be an interesting ball game, rocking the green, the green, white, green combination. I think it'll be a fun one, and I definitely look forward to being loud, being proud, and being in attendance there.
Definitely agree with that. And, there's always something about that one Bay Area trip every year that things just never feel certain. And, especially going against a Justin Wilcox-led team who, probably has something up his sleeve for Oregon that's special. But let's go. We've only got 2 more replies here. So let's go at PR Dolphin _PR said, have to have fans show up as then more than Cal fans show up. And that's something that we've already hit on, is like, yeah, the Ducks fans that are in attendance, if you are in the Bay Area, I hope you guys go up, buy those tickets right now as soon as you're watching this podcast, and make sure you go and say hi to Sam there.
Yes, please, definitely come by. Section D, I will be there. I will be loud. I will be rocking a whole lot of green, as it is a wear green game for the fans. I will definitely, probably this hat specifically, but I will be wearing quite a lot of green that day. Last one I'm going to get to. We appreciate all the responses, as always, every week, but so much to talk about in the second segment. Last one we got time for here from Max at Noah115935. I'm always scared that I can get through the numbers right, but I feel like I nailed it that time. Run the ball, keep Bo within the system, and they win easily. And I really can't argue with that. I definitely penned these next 2 ball games as a run the ball, play defense, you'll be okay kind of ball games. If Oregon can do that, again, keep Bo within the system, keep him doing what he does so well, the Ducks should be all right.
There's always that should, though. And a game that I know you and I have talked about on this podcast and together ourselves before. We've seen an Oregon team that looked pretty strong going down to Berkeley in 2008. I was thankfully at home redshirting. Didn't have to be out there in the rain and torrential downpour out there in Berkeley Memorial Stadium. And man, even though it had one of the defensive highlight plays of that season, it was not a game that was too offensive friendly.
It really wasn't. I think that was in that 2008 season, one of the first games that Jeremiah Masoli really had full control of the reins all on his own in that ball game. The Oregon offense sputtered a bit, did what they could, only ended up with 16 points in that game. Cal beat them 26-6. But you mentioned the defensive highlight, TJ Ward, along with an assist from Patrick Chung and Jarris Burden. I think Walter Thurman, and maybe the entirety of the Oregon secondary all at once, absolutely demolishing the offensive player for Cal. That one is one that makes the highlight tape, regardless of if you win or lose that game. But Nick, between 2008 and 2016, the Oregon Ducks traveled to California 3 different times, won those 3 games. You had, of course, the game that we're probably going to break down next, 2010, one of the most classic Oregon defensive showdowns of all time, including that 9+ minute drive we mentioned earlier in this podcast. That was followed up by a big win in 2012, a big win in 2014, not actually played in Berkeley. That one played in Levi Stadium. Oregon, side note, in 2014, scored more points in Levi Stadium in 2 games than the San Francisco 49ers scored in that stadium all season long. I really can't believe that either. But Nick, 2010, we've talked about it on this podcast before, but if it's not one of the best games, the most memorable games, let's put it that way, in Oregon history, I don't know what is. So let's get into it.
Well, man, in general, and there was something about Cal games in the Chip Kelly tenure that had a lot of meaning to them over the history. I think the one that stands out first and foremost was the 2009 game with those throwback uniforms. We're on the first play, we lose Walter Thurman for the season on the kick return, give up 3 points to Cal right there, and that's where the game ended for Cal. That was the only points they scored on the day. Oregon came back to throttle them with 40+ points, and it felt like that from there. There was a rivalry kind of built, and going down there, 2010, perfect season on the line, and absolutely struggling to get anything on offense, and having to come out with big special teams plays from Cliff Harris and a big block from Scott Grady there at the end to get a punt return for a touchdown. Without that, Oregon isn't getting the national championship game that season. But there's also one more. The first game I still remember going, this Herbert fella is going to be special, was against Cal too. So there's just something there that makes these games always kind of special, I think.
Well, you know what, Nick? That game, unfortunately, it was a loss. It was an overtime loss for the Ducks, 52-49 in that one. But you're right. That was a Justin Herbert, I believe, 4 or 5 touchdown game. A ton of yards in that one. Absolutely slinging the ball all over the place. And Nick, 2016 and 2020, both trips down to Cal for the Ducks that resulted in losses. Now, that 2020 game, obviously everything from that season, you just want to look at and it was just kind of a bit of confusion almost. It was almost just such a strange year when we had both Nick Pickett and Jordan Scott on this podcast throughout this season. They've talked about how odd and uncomfortable that 2020 season was. The Ducks in that game, I believe they led 17-7 at halftime, ended up losing it 21-17. Just one of the strangest, weirdest games you've seen out of the Ducks. I have a very hard time thinking Oregon's going to rock gray uniforms head to toe like they did in that one for a while after that ball game. But a fun one in between was 2018. The Ducks were able to get a 42-24 victory. That was another big performance from Justin Herbert, a big performance from CJ Verdell, a big performance from the Oregon defense as well. These Oregon-Cal games are always so interesting, such toss-ups, but 2 games that I kind of want to get into between these 2 teams, 2012 and then that 2014 game that we mentioned, but 2012 first, rocking what I'm willing to call one of the more underrated Oregon uniform combinations of a green helmet, white jersey, and black pants. Going down to Berkeley, as BJ said during the interview, he caught a touchdown pass in that game, one that bounced right off the hands of Will Murphy, actually, who caught his first touchdown just a couple of drives earlier in that ball game. From that 2012 game, it was a game that many people saw as a trap game because it came directly the week after Oregon defeated USC in heroic fashion in Los Angeles. The next week, a rain game a game that unfortunately saw the loss of Avery Patterson for the season. A strange game, but still one that Oregon was able to come away with a 59-17 victory.
Yeah, definitely. And overall, just being able to execute offensively in that game against, Cal, which at the time, and again, has kind of come back to that as a program, is a team that, has really sufficiently stopped the run usually against most of their opponents in the Pac-12. And that's something they've kind of prided themselves on. And always as a team going in that week, you're always kind of like trying to ramp things up from your scout team to try and have them play more physical, because that's just the brand that Cal football has prided itself on for so many years. I think like Stanford's gotten a lot of credit for doing that in terms of the offensive line in that front, but on the defensive side of the football up front, that's always been Cal, I feel like, in this program. And that's why it's so dangerous. Anytime you have to go down there, or even when they're coming up into Autzen Stadium, you have to be prepared. And you only get big wins like that when you are prepared in terms of not just execution, but that physicality.
Nick, moving on, 2014. This was another interesting game. As we said, in Levi Stadium, the Ducks put up 59 points in this game as well, but it was a much closer game, 59-41. The difference in this ball game, the second quarter, was huge for the Ducks. After the first quarter, it was a tie ball game, 14-14. But that second half, it opens with an Aiden Schneider field goal. Pharaoh Brown catches a touchdown, and then a play that's always a highlight to me, one of the slowest punt returns you will ever see. And it's not because he's slow. It just worked out that way. The blocking worked out that way. He was surrounded by blockers, so it was never a concern. Charles Nelson, a guy who's made so many big plays, offense, defense, and special teams during his time as a Duck, returned that punt. There was also a Dwayne Stanford touchdown just at the end of the half with about 40-ish seconds left to play. If it wasn't for that huge quarter, and also maybe the camo tights everybody was wearing beneath their gray pants in that ball game, it wouldn't have worked out the way it did. But in fact, it did. Oregon 59-41, a huge victory in Levi Stadium. It was an absolute showing for one Marcus Mariota. 326 yards, 5 touchdowns in that one. Also, we saw touchdowns from Dwayne Stanford had a pair. Pharaoh Brown had a pair. Byron Marshall had one as well, and Devin Allen, a big game as well, 47 yards receiving. So many guys who contributed in that ball game. So much fun seen by the Ducks in Levi Stadium. They have a pretty good history of playing some decent ball games there.
Hey man, that's when I still remember, like, okay, kind of shook that feeling from the 2010 road game, and we're able to really feel confident down there and play like we owned it, because that wasn't a feeling that was very familiar up until that point. You really had to build the program up, and as we've seen, Cal had a couple deficiencies, especially in funding in their athletic department, that has basically put them where they're at now.
Well, Nick, we've talked so much about the historic matchups. We could always mention more if we wanted to. The 17-7 game in 2019, the 24-17 game last year that probably shouldn't have been as close as it was, but it was also the game where Anthony Brown silenced the boos. A heck of an interesting series between these two teams. And an interesting note here, these two teams, if Oregon wins this weekend, they will be tied in the all-time series. Yes, that's right. Currently, Cal leads, and Cal and Oregon have been playing for quite a long time, both original Pacific Coast Conference members. They originally started the conference as Cal, Stanford, Oregon, and Oregon State. 41 wins for the Ducks, 42 wins for Cal, a pair of ties as well, because remember, overtime wasn't a thing in college football until the late 90s. The Ducks, with a win on Saturday, could officially tie that series up all time, 42 wins apiece.
Hey, and you know how important that is. I mean, there's no guarantees moving forward in years to come with the potential of conference realignment. So something to keep in mind. It's a good time to seize that potentially. But talking about this year's teams, man, it's something that there's a little bit extra on the line, I think, in this game, as we have all heard with the hiring process that Justin Wilcox was right down with Dan Lanning in the end, and as has been rumored, possibly offered and turned down the job. But hey, all I know is that there's even a couple former Once a Duck guests who were very, very interested in having Coach Wilcox. Even sent a letter to Rob Mullins that got a lot of fans, I guess, split into different factions for a time there now. But what an interesting time to look back at that. And I imagine just for that reason alone, Coach Wilcox probably has been watching this game on the schedule for a long, long time.
Well, look, Cal as a team is one that generally gets up for Oregon. It's just the truth. They are a team that historically has played some of their best games of the season against the Ducks. They really have. They've played some tough ball games. They played a tough ball game last week as well. They took Washington down to the wire. UW able to get a 28-21 victory that required a late score to get that one done. Cal has hung tight in almost every ball game they've played this season. They have wins over UC Davis, UNLV, and Arizona. They have losses to Notre Dame by 1 score, Washington State in a game that was somewhat lopsided, an overtime loss at Colorado that if it weren't for a couple of strange happenings, they probably would have gotten the win there. And then, as we said, the close loss to Washington. This is a team that will be ready. They will be prepared. They will be looking to put on a show for the folks checking in on this game on FS1. It will be a heck of a matchup between these two teams. And California, they have a young star in the making on offense that Oregon's really going to have to look out for.
Yeah, you talk about that, and that's unfortunately kind of been the centerpiece of their entire offense this year. But that's the running back. I'm sure you're talking about, right?
Jaden Ott,
Yep.
freshman running back for California. True freshman, no red shirt here. A true freshman, 205 pounds at 6 foot for the 18-year-old. You know he's got a good head on his shoulders too, because Cal Berkeley doesn't just let anybody in that building. 103 carries on the season. On those 103 carries, 618 yards and 5 touchdowns. He had one of the most unreal games that you will see, especially out of a freshman in their ball game against Arizona. He broke just about every single record that there is for a freshman running back in the Pac-12. Just an unbelievable ball game that he was able to go out in what ended up being a huge win for Cal, 49-31 over Arizona. In this game, Jaden Ott, 19 rushes, 274 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaged 14.4 yards per carry. If they just gave him the ball every time, it'd be a first down every time. A 73-yard long as well. He is fast. He is quick. He is strong. He'll run past you, around you, or through you. He is the number one person that will be wearing blue and gold that the Oregon Ducks need to be concerned about on that Cal offense.
Well, and what's most important, I think, about that is it's so complementary to what they're doing on defense. The only team to score over 30 points on them was Arizona, in that was a 49-31 game. So, at that point, you can have a lot of reasons to give up that many points. So if you take that out of their average, this is a defense that is doing very, very well to keep their opponents limited in what they can do and keeping them out of the end zone. And that's going to be very, very important for Oregon, to especially being on the road and being efficient, not giving up any turnovers, because what you do there with a running game like that, you may not get the ball back until the other team scores.
You really might not. And to say that he is the absolute only weapon for Cal is an overstatement. Is he the best? Probably. But Jack Plummer, the quarterback, he has 1,754 yards in the season, 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, despite Cal's 3-4 record. If you've got a guy who's got a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, you'll take that. That is a efficient quarterback who's playing well. His leading receiver, Jeremiah Hunter, 30 receptions, 448 yards, 2 touchdowns on the season. The Ducks, they're going to have to be looking out on defense. They've been running a whole lot of the 2 linebackers that we saw last week, a ton against UCLA spread offense. I'll personally be very curious to see if they prefer to run a little bit less of that nickel look against a team like Cal that is so willing to run the ball straight at you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to be very interesting because this is a team that it feels like can play with anybody, and sometimes to a fault. That's where Colorado has basically gotten their one win on this season, overtime against Cal. And you're sitting there thinking, especially with the way they dominated Arizona. How is that even possible? But here we are in the Pac-12, where if you don't bring it on the road, who knows what can happen.
Well, Nick, I think that for this Oregon offense, it really is just going to be more of a task probably than a lot of people are willing to give Cal credit for. Again, look at the points they've given up on the season. 31 to Arizona is by far the most. By far the most. Beyond that, they haven't given up more than 21 in a game. And tell me that doesn't sound like a Justin Wilcox Cal team. Not scoring too much themselves, but really limiting opponents. Only 13 given up to UC Davis, 14 to UNLV. They gave up 24 to Notre Dame. They gave up 28 and 28 against the Washington schools and 20 against Colorado. But when you are keeping all of your opponents below that 30-point marker, that's what I meant to say earlier, that 30-point marker, which in the Pac-12 is not a given at all. You're putting yourself in a halfway decent position. And it's a position that I'll be very curious to see, that is, what Oregon can do with this season.
Yep. Well, this is going to be a true road test, and I hope to see us, hopefully break that scoring streak and see us be the first school to hopefully put up 40 plus on them, because that's a streak I want to see keep going for Oregon more than I'd like to see this Cal streak go. So that leads us into how we usually wrap it up. And man, it's been tough to think about how this is going to play out on the field. I know, especially early day game, if you don't travel and haven't traveled in a while, you get a little comfortable. I don't know, man, but I'm excited to see us perform. If Bo Nix is able to go out, perform without any turnovers, and the offensive line is able to keep him clean, I'm confident we are going to score points, but I'm not confident we are going to hold that 40-point minimum. So I'm going to say that Cal will hold us to 38 points. But I have faith that this defense is going to travel, be hyped up, and that by the third quarter, you guys might have to start your own shout, because I only see Cal coming out of this game with about 17 points. So I'm going 38-17 Duckies.
Nick, I've just got a couple extra points on both sides, probably late on Cal's end. My final score for this ball game, 42-20 Oregon. I can see a couple of bend but don't break drives that result in field goals for Cal. I think Oregon, all season, I've been putting them repeatedly in that 30-point range. They've proven me wrong just about every single week. I'm finally willing to buy the hype this week. 42 points for the Oregon Ducks. They'll get out of California again. A 42-20 victory.
Well, I love it. I hope you have a great time. I hope one of us this week gets it right, even though we are splitting hairs again here with our predictions. But hey, as always, great to see you again, buddy. It was great to see you at game day. Hopefully we have another one we get you up here for soon. And I hope you and everybody else that goes down to Cal brings that same energy from game day right down there to the Cal Bears Stadium, and scare the shit out of Oski with how loud you are, because that
I'll
bear
try to,
deserves
but
it.
seeing Oski on Halloween weekend might terrify me.
Exactly. You got to bring the scare to him, or otherwise he's going to psych you out, man. That's the thing. He's one of those mascots. You don't think he's scary until you think about it in the back of your mind. So, hey, having the best mascot in all of college football, as as Pat McAfee reemphasized, hey, we got to all go down there, bring that energy, and enjoy yourselves. And as always, once a duck, always a duck.